So thank you, everybody. This is our first workshop of February 2022, and today I'm happy to introduce an old friend of mine, someone I've known for about 10 years, going back to my Lava days and helping build the ecosystem early on here in Silicon Beach. Nitya Kirat has been somebody that I've enjoyed working with, and he's got some great information to share with you today that's actually very pertinent, because as we all know, whether we like it or not, moving forward, we're going to be in some type of hybrid virtual world or in real life world, or a combination thereof. So I think what we will hear today will be helpful as we learn how to build our businesses and conduct business and be relevant in today's society. Nitya, just a couple of remarks about him. Many of you don't think you wanted to be a salesperson, but the reality is you are, and there's a lot riding on selling success, and I know that firsthand. Today's workshop has been set up to provide you with a couple of tactical ideas for your sales meetings. Our speaker, Nitya, is the author of a best-selling book, Winning Virtually: 10 Tiny Habits for Big Virtual Selling Success. He has trained and coached people from senior salespeople to technical founders at companies as large as Google and BlackRock, all the way to startups, as we are here today. And with that, I'm not going to take much more time. Happy to present and introduce to you Nitya Kirat.
Thanks for that introduction, Len, and thank you all for joining. I was very excited to speak to this group of entrepreneurs, and looking at the registration, some of the companies that you guys have started in healthcare and insurance and data and marketing, education. It's really, I admire the ability to take real world problems and do something about it, try to solve it, where most of us will just sit and do nothing and complain. So I'm grateful and honored to spend this time with you today. My business is focused on helping sales team improve through highly customized training and coaching programs. In 2020, what I saw happen was even experienced sellers struggled taking their in-person expertise and translating that in the virtual format. This from senior investment strategists at BlackRock to founders who were raising their next round over Zoom. This was a real challenge, and that was the impetus that got me to write the book, to try to help folks have more success in this virtual world. I started my career as a chemical engineer developing pharmaceutical drug processes. I'm now fortunate to train and coach salespeople around the world. And I tell people I'm living proof that sales can be taught. And I'm really passionate about helping others reach their full potential in this area. I'm not the best salesperson in my own family, though. That would be my 21-month-old daughter. And if any of you want to connect on LinkedIn, every once in a while, she shares some wisdom on a video. So a little bit about me, but excited to get started here. Raise your hand if you are an avid cyclist. We've got a couple. All right, Adrian. Raise your hand if you know how to ride a bicycle, or you know someone who knows how to ride a bicycle. All right. So this story is relevant. This gentleman's name is Bradley Wiggins. He was the captain of the British cycling team. From the years 1907 to 2007, the British cycling team won a total of 1 Olympic gold medal and 0 Tour de France's. They were really bad. Sponsors were refusing to sell them equipment because they didn't want to be associated with this pathetic loser team. So they said, we got to do something about this. In 2003, they hired a performance coach. His name was Dave Brailsford. And he said, we're going to come in and look at every little thing we do and figure out how to get just a little bit better. And so they did. They looked at the materials that the athletes wore. They looked at different shapes of bicycle seats. They looked at the temperature that athletes should sleep in. They looked at massage gels that were used post-workout. They looked at all these things and said, how can we get a little bit better? And then from the years 2007 to 2017, so the next 10 years, the British team won 66 Olympic gold medals and 5 Tour de France's in those 10 years. They also won 178 world championships. Rarely, and certainly not in sales, is there one big thing that someone needs to do or say, but more likely a series of, we call it tiny sales habits that when put together lead to really strong results. So we're going to work on some of those today. The purpose is to share, discuss, and practice a couple of ideas to help your virtual meetings start a little better. We're not going to cover the entire meeting. We're focusing on how they start, because if it starts well, it tends to go well. So I'll talk about the paradigm shift between what is really different between virtual and in person. We'll go through a couple of frameworks, and we'll have time for open discussion. I'm going to try and get through the content portion, hopefully by the top of the hour. And if anyone wants to, has to go, that's totally fine. If you want to stay and chat or share, have questions, I'm happy to stay. So that's the plan. In the chat, if you could please put a number down right now on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your ability to close business through selling virtually? I'm sure some of you are pretty good at it. If we see too many 10s, then I'm going to struggle here. You guys come teach the course, but how do you feel? Len's a 10, we know that. Got some 3s, 6s, 7s. Okay, good.
Maybe overly confident, but yet.
All right. So if my Wi-Fi cuts out, Len will continue.
Amen.
With this. All right. Oh, my goal is hopefully wherever you were, you feel one or two numbers higher by the end of it. So what is the big paradigm shift? What's different between in-person and virtual? If you look at this diagram, this depicts in a meeting how much time you in yellow are speaking and how much time the prospect or client is speaking. And we are suggesting this lower picture is more desirable than the picture on top. There's no one right number, but if you can get the prospect or client speaking more, that's a good thing. Good things happen. Now, this is true in virtual selling. This was also true and is true in in-person selling. What's really different in the virtual world is it's not just enough to say, all right, it was a 30-minute meeting and they spoke for 15 minutes and I spoke for 15 minutes. That's a nice balance. In the virtual space, the exchange of the mic needs to happen much more frequently than in person, right? You're in person, someone's going to respect your time. They're sitting in front of you. You can go on for 5 or 6 minutes. They're still there. In the virtual world, if you don't do something that gets people's attention every few minutes, it's hard to keep attention. So that's what we've tried to create. Like, you have to be deliberate in your meetings about how are we creating these regular interactions so that those 15 minutes aren't you talk for 15 minutes and then they talk, because again, they're not going to be there to talk. Those 15 minutes happen throughout that 30-minute meeting. So this is what we've seen as the biggest shift that folks have had to adjust to, are trying to. Some are not even aware that this is what the secret sauce is. So that's sort of fundamentally the principle behind everything else we talk about in the book. Give me a thumbs up if you're still with me. See what I did? This was a who's awake check. Now, we talked about there's multiple times, a lot of small things that can make a big difference, right? And we need to create engagement early and often. One way to do that is actually through our introductions. And this is something that people take for granted. You've either introduced yourself thousands of times and you have the same generic introduction, or it's a long, boring, full bio introduction. The introduction is a great opportunity to create a little bit more connection with your audience, get their engagement up a little higher to begin with. Who remembers my introduction at the start after Len passed it off to me? Or Oral, what do you remember from it?
You started as a chemical engineer in pharmaceutical practice, which jumped out because I started as a chemical engineer.
All right, Adrian, what stood out for you?
That was the same thing. I definitely picked up on that because I'm an engineer too, but I really picked up on the cycling. That's a big hobby of mine.
Good. When I started, Bennett, you were going to comment?
Yeah, I enjoyed that you acknowledged some of the work that we had done. You know, you've entrepreneurs within insurance, or like that perked me up because it's like, oh, he knows a little bit about what I did.
That's the big point here, right? It's my introduction. Technically, this is where I can tell you how great I am. But the first thing I said was how I'm excited to work with this group and how I appreciate you. A little thing like that, it's subtle. They may not even know what happened, but they're going to like you more. So we've got a framework as you think about your introductions for meetings with prospects, clients, centers of influence. 3 steps. Something about them. The more specific you can be, the better, right? If you're meeting one individual person, you can get pretty specific. You're talking to a larger group, it's a little more challenging, but there's still ways to do it. So something specific that you are excited about meeting with them for or admire about them. Number 2 is your role. And more importantly with your role is what's the value you can see, what's the value they might be able to get from your role. And thirdly, something about yourself. We all are trying to be interesting and interested. So what do you think might resonate with the audience you are talking about? Because we've all got long resumes and you can say a lot of things, but what are 1 or 2 things that can make people trust you more, like you more? So that was the framework. As you can see, this was the introduction I shared using those 3 steps. Now I mentioned my daughter was born in, she's 21 months. She was born in April 2020, right when COVID started. So we were signed up for parenting classes that all got canceled. And I felt pretty good based on the books I read and people I talked to. The one area I was nervous about was diaper changing. So I'm at the hospital. I asked the nurse, hey, how do I do this? She says, yeah, it's simple. You put the new diaper under the old, you wipe from front to back, you put the flaps on, done. I said, okay. I came home that first day. It was hard. I fumbled my way through it. Day 2, still very deliberate about making sure I did this right. Fast forward a few months. I believe if diaper changing was in the Olympics, I would have been there competing for the gold medal. My daughter gave me opportunity after opportunity for practice. In sales, the theory is not complex. In practice, people revert back to how they used to do things. And so we're gonna give you some deliberate time to practice. My goal is you've got some meetings lined up on your calendar. You're gonna do some work here so that you're even better in those meetings. So I'll give you 3 to 4 minutes. Think about a meeting you have coming up. Hopefully it's with a specific person. If you don't, think about a likely scenario or specific person you'd want to be introducing yourself to. And just jot down a couple of points. It doesn't have to be perfect, but we're trying to build this habit of using this framework. So I'll give you 3 or 4 minutes. I will shut up, jot down your introductions, and we'll do some practice.
Nietzsche, we had a new person join us, just so you know. And his name is Ellie.
Welcome, Ellie. We're using this framework on the screen to jot down our own introductions. Going to get in a room shortly.
Hello, gentlemen. I'm glad to join. I'm actually driving right now.
Okay. You won't be writing much down then. Groups of 3. Okay. Just changed my matrix. I will go back to the beginning here.
Did you have twos?
I set it up as 2s already, but that's okay.
That's fine. No, that's fine. That's fine.
All right.
Totally fine. Give me a thumbs up if you're ready. Yeah, got something down. Okay. We're gonna break off into breakout rooms. Again, the introduction is likely to be somewhere between 45 seconds to a minute. You'll get paired up with a person. We'll be in the breakout rooms pretty quickly, just for about 3 minutes. So the person who woke up earlier this morning, you get to go first. So you figure that out. You don't need to give a lot of context. You're just here to practice delivering your introduction. The other person will figure it out. So practice, switch roles, partner 2 goes. If there's any time, you can exchange some feedback, and we will see you back here. Who has
Be patient with me while I do this, folks.
And again, if you've not written something, you can be a good practice partner. Allow your partner to get a practice and give them some feedback. We'll see you back here in 4 minutes.
Okay.
All right. So Paula. Sorry, I'm doing this manually, so it does take a little bit of time. Let me just do it this way. Two is Lisa, John, Lisa. 3 is Pablo. 4 is. And Nietzsche, did you want me to put you in one?
Yeah, I don't mind if somebody needs a partner, or I can.
No,
do
we
this.
have everybody partnered up, but do you want to listen to any of these?
Yeah, put me in.
All right. Roy, do you want to go into a room? Roy, do you want to join a room?
Are you talking to me?
Yes.
Oh, sure. Why not? I could just listen.
Goodbye. Paula, are you going to go into a room, or are you distracted?
I'm really excited to have that.
Hey, Ryan, I just joined. The person I assigned to this room did not come in, so you got me and Roy.
Cool. I just ripped off my little intro there. Short, sweet. Yeah.
Do it again. I want to hear it.
Okay. Hey, Kevin. I was really impressed with the robust roster of general talent that you guys have and a growing list of esports players and influencers. My name is Ryan Ross. I'm a co-founder of Play Top Dog, which is a platform that enables amateur gamers to bet on themselves and win money playing their favorite video games. I grew up with a passion for gaming. I've been playing almost daily my whole life, and I'm excited to have the opportunity to talk with you today.
Awesome. Good job.
Thanks.
Solid.
Roy, do you want to try, or did you write anything down?
Well, I didn't really, because I don't have like a company. I just kind of,
Well, do it as an introduction of yourself.
yeah. So I was in sort of like a role of like a job interview, I guess, trying to sell myself.
Yeah.
I was particularly impressed by the growth of your company and management. I was excited to talk to you today because I think that I could help you grow your market better. My role as a marketer is to help you and your company grow your market. I just repeated that. Something about me is I began into marketing fairly recently, but I have experiences with political campaigns and whatnot.
Great. Hey, Ryan, I got your email. Good job. Congrats.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited. It'll be cool. But yeah, it's a good opportunity, great company, and I think the role I'll thrive in.
And I know people that used to work there, not currently. So,
oh, really?
If you have questions, I can connect you to somebody who's a friend of mine who used to work at Mercury.
Cool. Are you going this weekend, Len, or just watching from?
I'm watching from home. I did not win any lottery, whether it be for the California lottery or the Rams lottery.
And they're just about the same at this point. So
they had 50 sets of tickets that that you could win the opportunity to purchase.
Yeah. No, I'm pumped. I think the city it's gonna explode on Sunday. It should be fun.
Yeah. There's going to be a big tailgate here on the promenade Friday afternoon.
Oh, nice.
All right. I'm going to close this.
All right.
We'll wait for everyone else now. They get a minute.
All right, welcome back. Who was impressed by their partner? All right, good. If your partner doesn't have their hand up, get a better partner next time. Hopefully, again, the idea is that the big change here is get specific about why you're excited, what research you've done, what you know about them. Be thoughtful about what you share about yourself. The next framework I want to talk about around opening meetings.
Just one second. I think John had a question, and he had his hand up. So I just want to make sure that we get that taken care of.
Yeah,
absolutely. So thanks, Len. That was just me raising my hand for being impressed with my partner.
Okay.
Sorry, I just left it up a little too long. I was trying to figure that out. My apologies.
All right. Thanks, John.
Thanks,
Sorry
Len.
about that.
This next framework I'm going to talk about is around the agenda for a meeting. And me and my colleagues, we sometimes joke in the old days where we used to fly around doing trainings. I remember once I was in London for 4 days doing a series of trainings. And at the end we said, What was your biggest takeaway? And it was the agenda framework that I'm going to share next. So it's a basic part of the conversation, but it's a huge opportunity to start the meeting well, and you'll see create that engagement that we've been talking about. So if you've ever been to a meeting and wondered what's the point, the framework is T-point, where the T is for thank you, the P is for purpose, the O is outline, IN is input, and T is transition. So I'm going to talk through this briefly. Again, the T, pretty straightforward. It's just a nice transition from the rapport building or small talk that you're making into the business part of the meeting, right? Thanks again for making time today. It's nice to show gratitude. The P, this is a single sentence that conveys to the prospect or client or other person why this meeting is valuable for them. One sentence. Now, if you look at the examples on the screen, raise one finger if you think the purposes on the left are better. Raise two fingers if you think the purposes on the right are better for you to share in a meeting. Two, right? It's about them. It's not about us. I've seen so many meetings where they say, hey, the purpose of this is to tell you all about our company. The purpose of this is to show you what our product can do. No, the purpose is understand how this product can fit what you're trying to accomplish. The purpose is help you achieve your launch goals for this year. So again, it's critical. One sentence, but we talk about little shifts in perception. It starts here with that purpose. The O is outline. This is what most people traditionally think about for an agenda, right? The 3 or 4 things you're most likely to talk about. A couple of points on this. Think about what's in your outline and what order they are in so that you can create more interaction and engagement. If I share an outline saying, you know, thanks for meeting, I want to tell you about our team, our process, I'm going to share some case studies with you. Who's likely to do most of the talking? I would. Versus, you know, hey, I'd love to start by understanding what some of your biggest priorities are this year. Then I can share our process and we can brainstorm some ideas. Now I've built in that they're going to be talking pretty early in that meeting. In the agenda, avoid getting into the topics. So for example, I might say, so I thought we can cover, I'd love to learn more about your team. And then I can share some ideas. Rather than, I'd love to learn more about your team, what's their tenure, how many people you have, where they're located, like get into that later, right? So just give the bullet point items of the agenda and then get into the meeting. Just a couple of best practices that we've observed. And if you've got more than 3 or 4, consider it consolidating or bullet pointing them. The input. This is the first commitment you are getting from the prospect or client. And it's not a commitment on a deal. It's a commitment, it's an agreement on how you want to use the rest of your time together. It's a commitment on the agenda. Now you can do this in a couple of ways. You can do this in a closed-ended way, right? I thought we'd cover A, B, and C. Does that sound good? That's good. In the virtual world of going back to that paradigm shift, this is a great opportunity to make sure the other person speaks and is awake. So the open-ended version might look something like this. You know, I'd love to talk about A, B, and C, but I want to make this meeting really valuable for you. What else should we think about including today? What would you like to get out of this meeting? Some open-ended version of that question to get their input on what they want to discuss through the rest of the meeting. One is good, the other one is even better. And then finally, well, let me ask you this. Why do people refrain from asking that input question or getting input during their agenda? Yeah, Lisa.
Because they're afraid of the answer.
They're afraid of the answer. It might throw them off the slide deck they prepared and we're going to talk about. But if I'm in a meeting with a prospect and there's something on their mind, I would love to know in minute 3 rather than minute 33 or 23 or never, right? So get the input. Now you have 2 options with the input. You can either acknowledge it and say, I'm going to get back to this, right? Or you might start with addressing it. Generally, I think about if the topic they bring up is like an elephant in the room, they're not going to be able to get past that point, then you need to address it right away. In most cases, it makes a lot of sense to say, that's a great point. We're definitely going to talk about that when we get into implementation, or we're definitely going to talk about that when we get into the investment, ROI metrics, whatever you want to talk about. So in most cases, you can just acknowledge. In some cases, you might talk about it first. This works in writing. This also works verbally. I recommend clients send it to clients in writing in advance. This is also a good way to confirm the meeting, show them you're prepared. And even if you send it in writing, to deliver it verbally at the start of the meeting, to take the time to get the input goes a long way. In this case, again, yeah, I was talking to a group of a dozen people, and I still found a way for some input, right? The input question was, rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. Again, one more way to get people to do something rather than get bored and switch to their emails. So again, all sounds basic. Things that I find people sometimes struggle with is creating a purpose that's truly client-centric and asking the input question in a good open-ended way. Those are some of the nuances that I think get left out sometimes. So I'm going to give you 3 minutes. Think about a meeting. It can be the same meeting you practice your introduction for. It can be a different meeting. This works for internal meetings as well. This works. It doesn't have to be necessarily with a sales meeting. This is a great framework. So I'll give you 3 minutes. Think about a meeting you have coming up that you're going to be leading, that you want to go better, and jot down your T-point agenda, and we'll do a little practice.
It's interesting to me how each one of these points are just embedded in how I approach meetings. I don't even have to think about it. The thank you from rapport and moving into the meeting, getting the buy-in on the agenda. So everybody understands what we're trying to accomplish, and gaining that agreement up front is really important to the beginning of a meeting. I have a very difficult meeting this afternoon, and trying to figure out, and I'm not leading it, but I'll have a lot of input, and I'm just trying to figure out how to make sure that whoever's leading this takes this approach.
Where are they? They should be here.
Yeah, well, that would have been optimal.
Yeah, what you'll see with some of these ideas and frameworks is most of you will be doing some version or some of them. Sometimes the idea is to create the habit where this is the norm. Does anyone need more time? No, you guys feeling good? I'm gonna leave it up to the group. And for those who are off camera, you can put it in the chat. If you would like to get into a breakout room and practice with a partner, raise one finger. If you would like just a couple of people, I'll give them an opportunity to practice to the group and get some coaching, but 2 fingers. So it's really up to you. Lisa, how many fingers is that?
2.
2. A lot of people are putting up 2. Okay, who, Pablo, you put up 1.
I did, but I'm okay. I can stay in the room with everyone.
So what you get to practice first if you'd like. So again, this is totally voluntary. The idea is you get a little practice, you get some free coaching from me.
Sorry, of course I can go. Hi, thank you for answering my message. The purpose of this meeting is to learn more about the photo editing industry. We are going to talk about how we work with vendors, what tools we normally use, and the typical problems that you have. Can you tell me how you work with Photoshop on a day-to-day basis? That's it.
Okay, good. Couple of, I'm glad we're practicing a couple of ideas. If you're open, Pablo. One.
Yeah, of course.
You said the 2 things you were going to talk about, and then the third thing was understand them better. If you put that one up front, right? I think. Oh, the third one is about the problems.
Right.
That they typically face.
Right.
I might put that first. I might say, hey, we'll talk about the problems that we see in this industry and see what, how it applies for you. And then we can talk about some solutions and ideas. That way you get them sharing their problems up front.
Right. Good point.
The
Yes.
other reminder for the group is that the question that we're asking, and yours was a good question, Pablo. I would put that question after the transition. Once you're getting into the meeting, I would start with that question.
Right.
The agenda input part is a question about the agenda, not a question about something else that might be important to them or to discuss. It's purely about the agenda. So some version of how do you want to use the rest of our time today? What would be most valuable to talk about? And then they'll tell you, and then you say, okay, great. Before we get started, I'm curious, how do you currently use Photoshop? So then you would ask the question.
Got it. Okay.
Thanks, Pablo.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Someone else?
Oh, a bunch of shy people.
I can go.
Go
All
for
right,
it, Lisa.
This is in preparation for a meeting that I have coming up. So you get to role play the person. Okay. John, thanks very much for scheduling the time today. I really appreciate it. As my understanding of the purpose of this meeting is to get your launch strategy set in motion so that you have a high degree of confidence that it's going to work. So I've outlined an agenda of a couple of bullet points. We've got some key activities to maximize your organizational success and timing of your message delivery, the sequence of events that needs to happen. And then at the end of it, I hope we gain some buy-in and agreement on next steps. So that's my thoughts on this. I'd be very interested in hearing what your agenda for today includes and if I've missed any steps. And then transition.
Yeah, I guess I'm just curious on past experience or success you've had with similar clients.
So I have not. This is my first client that I'm dealing with a launch, and they are in a situation where they feel like they're very much behind the 8 ball and should have been doing this about 6 months ago.
So again, that's one of those examples of you ask an input question and they say something. I would do some version of, yeah, that's a great question. I'll definitely talk about my experience once we get into this.
Okay,
Super job on the rest of the framework. The purpose was very client-centric. It was not about you, it was about them. The outline was succinct and really good input question. Hey, this is what I thought, but what would be valuable?
okay, good, thank you.
Does anyone have any other questions around the agenda framework specifically?
How many people use a written agenda for meetings, whether they put that into an email or some type of formal agenda before you have a meeting or as you have a meeting? And this is for every meeting. Yeah, I do. Yeah,
I do.
yeah.
And I don't accept meetings from people trying to sell me if there's no agenda.
Oh, that's interesting.
I'm just not showing up to see what fuck happens.
What's your pushback? How do you push that away? If
No,
someone says,
they send the invite or they say, you know, can we talk? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Send me the agenda, please.
okay, all right, just something very simple. That's a great technique to put people off.
I just
Or
want them
to
to
put the responsibility on them. Yeah.
Right. I want them to be thoughtful about our time.
Yeah.
So, and I try to do that. If you look at my inbox and a sent folder and search for agenda, you'll see thousands of them
Right.
for meetings. All
Very
right.
cool.
Very good. The other area that comes up around virtual selling or the challenge is, hey, how do I make a connection, right? How do you make connections virtually with someone you've never met in person? It is harder for sure, right? But there are things that can be done. So a couple of ideas. Yeah, do your research. It's not hard to do a little bit of preparation to do some research on who you're meeting with. Be prepared. Think about your questions in advance for rapport. Who can guess what the #1 rapport building topic in America is?
COVID.
Yeah, that comes and goes, but even, but higher than COVID. #1 rapport building topic. What do most people talk about when they get into a meeting with someone?
The weather.
Zoom fatigue.
Their
Traffic.
kids.
Bennett said the
Parking.
weather. The weather.
The
Think
weather.
about it. I have calls with people in New York and they're like, what's the weather like in LA? I'm like, that's 75 and sunny. What's it like in New York? Like, oh, 25 and gloomy or rainy. We furthered our relationship in no way by talking about the weather, but that is the default that people go to because they haven't taken the time to think about a smarter question. Number 3, be relevant, right? If you're talking to someone in LA right now, the Super Bowl might be a good topic to bring up. Number 4, you can also control the energy of the meeting by the question you ask, right? So a question like, hey, what's the best thing that's happened so far in 2022? Changes a lot, is a different question from, you know, have you known anyone get really sick from COVID? Right? One is not such a positive question. The other one is a positive question. So again, you think about the questions. And then lastly, be real, be genuine. If you don't care about kids, don't ask about kids. I'm not a dog person. I don't ask people about their dogs. I don't want to know about them. So be you.
This meeting's over.
Sorry, Len. And there's an acronym, RPRPR. I'm kidding. There's no acronym. That doesn't make any sense anyway. But a couple of ideas around building some rapport.
Prepare, be relevant.
I'm gonna quickly summarize kind of what we've talked about and then transition into open discussion Q&A for anyone who would like to stick around. So it's not one big thing. It's a lot of little things that lead to sales success. Sometimes you will never know. You will never know if it was your agenda, if it was your shirt, if it was something in your background. All we can do is try to control every little thing that we can control. A key metric to think about is, how are we making sure the other person is actively involved in the meeting throughout the meeting, right? Every couple of minutes, whether there's some kind of physical check-in, whether there's a verbal check-in, whether it's a question to them, you need to construct your meeting so that the other person or party is actively involved. A couple of ideas that were shared, particularly around starting meetings well: the client-centric or counterintuitive introduction, ideas for rapport, and then this agenda framework, which is a huge opportunity to create some interaction up front. And I appreciate everyone jumping into practice as well.